My name's Carlos, and in this video I'll be discussing cinematic realism, focusing on the animation of one of my favourite filmmakers, Hayao Miyazaki. Miyazaki is a very traditional animator. For the vast majority of his career, every single frame of his films has been hand-drawn by either himself or his animation team onto hand-painted backdrops. In recent years, some work has been digitized, but key frames are still hand-drawn, and the material, tactile aspects of animation have always continued to be the focus of Miyazaki's work. Miyazaki is a great creator to discuss regarding cinematic realism and animation. As he has expressly stated, he himself is heavily inspired by the iconic historical animator Walt Disney. Given this, Miyazaki employs similar techniques to Disney's hyper-realism in his animation. As an example, we have this sequence from Spirited Away, in which Chihiro, the protagonist, witnesses her parents turning into pigs. The slow, heavy crash of the pigs in the scene is extreme, included to suggest physical properties of the object in the frame, rather than directly depict them as they would be in reality. This, of course, is to build a state in which movement on the screen feels real. Another example of this here is a scene from Porco Rosso of a plane engine running inside Mr. Piccolo's shed. As we can see in this scene, the entire shed is blown to pieces, but we intuitively understand this as not a literal depiction of how strong the plane engine is, but rather how strong the engine feels to Marco, the pig, and Piccolo in the scene. As with Disney, Miyazaki's take on hyper-realism is a much more effective relationship with realism, so to speak, than a literal approach would be. This exaggerated style is more effective because it better serves the specific stories that Miyazaki makes, stories with heavy fantastical elements and melodramatic, often abstract characterization. As André Bazin states, the world seen through the perspective of the camera lens tells us more about the filmmaker's subjectivity than the reality he or she tries to address. I would argue that Miyazaki is aware, even if not consciously, of this subjectivity, and he leverages it intentionally through his animation. He doesn't want his planes to look and move like actual planes. Instead, he wants them to feel how planes feel, as if he and us, as the audience, are flying in one. This leads into how Miyazaki uses these movements, based on an emotional reality, to build a hidden foundation of realism in worlds that are explicitly fantastical. To extrapolate from my earlier example of flight, in visually and audially capturing the sensation of flying, Miyazaki is able to leverage this same feeling of real when animating a dragon flying in Spirited Away. Dragons, of course, are explicitly mythical creatures, and yet the dragon has a physical presence on screen, inspired by movement in reality. This is also reinforced by other naturalistic movements, of course, mimicking, for example, a snake. Another great example of this is the animation of the wolves in Princess Mononoke. These animals are impossibly large, and for their size, impossibly fast. However, they still move in ways that make them feel like real wolves, and their expressions make direct, artful reference to how we understand wolves to behave. Because of this, we're willing to accept them as wolves in an emotional sense because they feel like wolves. I'll return now to the scene from Spirited Away, when Chihiro's parents turn into pigs. In this image, we see Chihiro's father crash to the ground, dishes flying everywhere. The ground shakes when Chihiro's father, as a pig, impacts with it. This sensation of mass helps ground us in the world. As before, it makes the scene feel real without us questioning the practical mechanisms of the story, like how did Chihiro's parents turn into pigs?